Sweet the whispers in your ear whenever Ember wanders near.
We're gonna start off with our big one. We are going to start off strong. All right. Let me pull it up here. I've been holding on to this because this is a long one. This is an hour and a half. All right. So I am going to endeavor not to yap too much because this is an hour and a half long video, and if I yap like I normally do, chances are we will be here for longer than Taylor. So I'm going to no, not Nick Shirley. Nick the Fat Electrician. He is talking about Logan Weston, the fighting preacher. This is one of his longest videos to date. Okay, it is almost an hour and a half long. So we're just gonna jump straight in because chat, this could be a while. So let's do it.
The fact that this guy doesn't even have a Wikipedia page about him is absolutely criminal.
Ooh,
Today we're talking about Logan Weston, aka the Fighting Preacher, which is one of the greatest military nicknames of all time. And boy oh boy did he earn it, because wait till you hear this guy's rap sheet. Years in service, 27. Wars fought in, 3. Founding member of Merrill's Marauders, or as we know it today, the 75th Ranger Regiment.
What?
Credited with knocking out multiple enemy tanks by himself at the same time. Helped lead the last bayonet charge in U.S. military history. Became a Green Beret in his 40s so that he could advise on how to combat communism in Vietnam.
Of course.
And this is normally the part of the video where I would list off all of his awards and citations, but seeing as he has over 200 of them, we're just gonna hit Distinguished Service Cross, 5 Silver Stars, 7 Bronze Stars with V device, and 6 Purple Hearts.
Oh, is that all?
And we're gonna get to how he got all that right after a word from our sponsor.
Delete me. Delete me.
What? Where's my new gun?
This is my commercial, so my tax write-off.
That's not what we agreed to.
I don't care what you said. All right, boys, let's go.
You know, taxes on a gun's more expensive, right? This video is brought to you by Delete Me. Super simple, straightforward business model. You give them money every month. They turn around and make sure the data brokers on the internet aren't selling your personal information. Okay, I've read some of the comments, and a lot of you guys have the same concern. You're like, hey, if I don't want my personal information out on the internet, why would I give my personal information to this online company to try to take my information off the internet? It seems like a self-defeating endeavor. Okay, that's a valid concern. I had the same one when I was getting signed up. Here's the thing. When you go to sign up, you don't really give them your personal information. I think when I signed up, I gave them my name and my email address, and that was it. Then after you get signed up and you give them that information, they're like, okay, give us like 3 to 5 days and we're gonna have a questionnaire we need you to fill out. You show back up 3 days later, and the questions, I'm not gonna lie, they're creepy. It's just like 25 questions that you answer yes or no to, but the questions are like, have you ever been associated with this address? It's the house you currently live in or one that you recently lived in. Is this your phone number? Yes or no? Are you related to this person and the name is like your mom or your dad or your sister or somebody very closely related to you? It's just all the information they were able to accrue with nothing more than your name and 1 email address. Nothing convinces you that you need to delete me.
She's
more
just
than
that
their
shake a
enrollment
little and
process.
that
You
all
go
about
through,
his new
basically
gun.
just tell
You
them,
forgot
like, yeah,
the
you
shimmy
figured out
part.
who I
That's
was,
not-
and then they
you
go through
cannot
and
do
make
the
sure
shake
nobody else can do
without
that
the
shit. So
shimmy.
yeah, I recommend them. I've been using them longer than they've been paying me to talk about them. If you wanted to give them a try, I'll have a link and a discount code down below. Let's get back to the video. Our story begins on January 5th, 1914, when Logan Weston is born. He is the oldest of 5 kids, and like pretty much everybody else from this era, his childhood kind of sucked. Family's dirt poor, like log cabin in the woods with no plumbing or power, dirt poor. He bounced around a lot between Michigan and Pennsylvania, and he only got an 8th grade education before going and getting manual labor jobs to support himself and his family. During the Great Depression, Logan's hunting buddy, basically his best friend who has a wife and kids, isn't able to find work, and he's not able to support his family, so Logan, wanting to help him out, goes to the superintendent at this coal mine and is like, hey, can we hire this guy? And he's like, no, we're struggling to keep you guys employed right now. So Logan basically quits his job and gives it to his friend so that he can support his wife and kids. Takes him a while, but eventually he finds a job as a lumberjack, and shortly after that, the coal mine that he used to work in collapses and a bunch of people die. A lot of his friends, thankfully not his best friend that was his hunting buddy.
Wow.
Because of that, the mine ends up getting shut down and his friend is now out of a job again. So Logan does the same thing. He goes to his lumberjack boss and is like, hey, I'll quit. Give this guy my job. He then goes, finds a job as an appliance repair guy. And then a couple months after that, there's a logging accident and a bunch of more of his friends die from the same crew that he was working with. This really starts to eat at him. He feels like death is
what the actual fuck? What pissed off gypsy cursed this man? Oh, like, did he, like, refuse to cross a gypsy's ball with silver or something? What the fuck is happening right now?
Following him everywhere he goes. A bunch of his friends have died. He's super depressed about it. And one day he gets home from work at his appliance repair job and decides that he's going to get a gun out of his dresser and put it to his head. He slowly squeezes the trigger as the hammer's pulling back, pulling back, pulling back. And then he says that he hears a voice saying, wait, and he goes to let off the trigger. But before his brain can send that signal, the hammer drops and the gun should have fired, but it doesn't. Not believing what just happened, he thanks God for a second chance, walks outside of his house, and then shoots a tree with the exact same gun, and the gun goes off perfectly fine. And Logan interprets this as God having other plans for him, and it just completely shifts his perspective. Previously, he was thinking that death was following him everywhere he goes, and now he feels like he was being protected. God saved him from that mining incident just in time. He saved him from the logging incident, and now he just saved him from himself. Because of this, Logan decides that he's going to give his life to God. At the age of 25 years old, he decides that he's going to go off to Bible college to become a pastor. And that's what he does. He is just reading his Bible and studying in college constantly, and then his junior year of college, the draft starts for World War II in 1940. And at this point, at least, there's no exceptions for going to Bible college as getting you out of the draft, so he has to go, so he does the only thing he can do. He goes, he proposes to his girlfriend, gets engaged, and then sets off for the Army. Winds up at Camp Shelby, Mississippi for basic training, and when he first gets there, like just stepped off the bus to the base, they're in a big open field. There's a guy yelling that basically talking to hundreds of these kids that don't know what's going on, and he's like, okay, look, if you want to be infantry, go over there. You want to be artillery, go over there. You want to be a medic, go over there. You want to be this, go over there. Yada, yada, yada. And he's looking around. He doesn't know what any of these.
Wait. Okay, this seems new to me. You got to choose what your MOS is? Like, when you got drafted back then? Well, really? Yeah, I guess maybe at that point. I don't know. I feel like maybe there's a, like, I think there would be the risk of it being too lopsided. Like, everybody's going to one thing, and it would end up lopsiding it. I don't know.
Words mean. He doesn't know what infantry is. He doesn't know what artillery is. This is 1940. There's no TV show. You can't Google this beforehand. You're not getting to pick a job. So he's like, I don't know what to pick.
True,
so
they
for
did
some
need
reason,
everything.
He picks infantry, thinking that sounds easy. Infants don't do a lot. I could probably do whatever the infantry does.
There may be a situation here in which a serious mistake was made.
From here, he goes to basic training, then he goes to infantry school, then he's just stationed at Camp Shelby, and the entire time he's also functioning as like a pseudo chaplain. Again, gotta remember, he's like 27 years old at this point. A lot of the other people coming up are young 18-year-old kids. There's a huge deficit or like lack of religious services available because of how quickly the U.S. military is growing. So he's leading prayer groups, he's, you know, consulting and talking to guys that are having personal problems, much like a chaplain does. And then December 7th, 1941, Pearl Harbor gets attacked, and then within a matter of hours, he is ordered to move out, and he is somewhere along the Mississippi River at a choke point, basically pulling security on the Mississippi River in case the Japanese invade. You gotta remember, this is Pearl Harbor. It's complete chaos. Nobody knows what's gonna happen. There could be a land invasion at any minute. People have no idea. So he was just mobilized somewhere that the Japanese might show up on the Mississippi River. And again, I presume because of the chaos in the days following Pearl Harbor, nobody knows what's going on. Everybody's scrambling. He winds up camping along the Mississippi River with all of his guys for like a month. Like, he was mobilized within hours of Pearl Harbor being attacked and then just stood out there and made sure the Japanese didn't show up at a river for a month straight. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, I'm trying to tell you, I'm pretty sure they forgot they sent him there, okay? Anyways, regardless, by the second week of January, he finally gets orders to head back to Camp Shelby, so he packs up all of his stuff, heads back to Camp Shelby, and when he gets there, he is immediately promoted to sergeant. And again, this is obviously because of Pearl Harbor. We're going to war, we're gonna need millions of new troops, millions of new draftees, millions of new volunteers, pretty much anybody with
Yeah, we're asking like how did he get drafted back then? It was, you gotta remember, like at this point in America's history, the U.S. Army was still severely depleted from World War I, and this was an effort like. But by the time when the draft kicked off, there was tensions were already ratcheted up severely. There were already engagements happening in Europe. Yeah, they downgraded post-World War I. But by this point, when the draft snatched him up, there were already engagements occurring over in Europe. There was, the tensions were wrapping up, and while the U.S. was not involved, there was full-blown battles happening in Europe, because Germany was making its move. But yet U.S. was like, nope, we're not involved in this. We're staying hands off. But at the same time, we've got to get ready because we can see what's happening over there. And while we do not want to be involved, we have to be ready in case they do take the fight to us. And then, of course, Japan attacks Pearl Harbor, and then it turned into game on. And so there we go. And then everybody gets activated.
Any military experience at that moment was going to get put in a leadership position, so they were promoting everybody. He then gets pulled into his CO's office, and CO tells him that he thinks that Logan would be a good fit for officer candidate school. Logan says he's interested. He goes off. He goes through like a board, like an interview type process, and when he gets kicked back, he gets rejected. Now, I don't know what happened in this interview, but apparently the promotion board's official reason for not promoting him was his religious convictions were too staunch, and they recommended him for a psychological evaluation. The commanding officer that had recommended him for officer candidate school finds out about this. He's pretty pissed off, feels bad for Logan, brings him back into his office. He apologizes and then immediately promotes him to staff sergeant. A couple days after that, he gets orders, grab your shit, get on the train. He gets on the train. Next thing.
So he was like, well, not necessarily like Desmond. I don't think what I'm trying to remember about Desmond Doss. Desmond Doss was a conscientious, words are hard. A conscientious objector, and he refused to carry a firearm. And that's why he was like, and I believe that was the rationale for him why he became a medic. But I don't think his religious belief was so strong that it fell into the same category as Logan here. He just didn't want to hurt people and refused to carry a firearm and was a conscientious objector. People are bringing up like Alvin York. Yeah, it's closer to that, only I don't know. It's like with Alvin York, it was more of like, I'm on a mission from God. And I get the feeling that Logan Weston was more, I'm guessing during his officer candidate interview, he probably just, because he has been super religious and because he has been functioning almost as a chaplain, I would have hazarded a guess that when he was answering questions, everything was in regards to basically faith. Like every answer was a faith-based answer, and because every answer to the question was essentially deeply rooted in faith, the military went, oh, it's psychological issue, blah blah blah. Whereas with Alvin York, he was religious, and he's like, I'm on a mission from God, but I'm guessing he didn't conduct himself so religiously as Logan Weston did. And I think that's where the differentiation comes to play. Because also, don't forget, if I'm remembering correctly with Alvin York, he didn't really drill down into the I'm on a mission from God until he was in theater. Until he was in war theater. If my memory of the story is correct, that's when he really went full on, I'm on a mission from God and I'm going to win, and basically just went doom guy in theater. Whereas they're not yet, and with Logan Weston, it was just an interview when they were not in combat, and so maybe because we're not in the fear of war, they looked at it differently with his very faith-based answers, perhaps, and that's why they had this thing of, oh, it must be a psychological thing because when they're not in theater, they're not going to care. When you're in the middle of a war zone or when you're in the middle of like the war, they're not going to care. But they're still in the rears. They're still in the U.S. So they probably took that consideration, or not consideration. Excuse me. That's incorrect. They looked at his like significant faith-based answers more critically because there was not that pressure of we're in the middle of a war. This is taking place in a war zone, or, we're taking place in the theater of war. And so we just got to go get rubber stamp people through, effectively speaking. And I'm guessing that's why the committee or whoever that conducted the interview for Officer Candidate School went, oh, you're way too faith-based. That's like, it's to such a degree that it's a psychological thing. That's the only explanation I can think of when we're doing these comparisons.
And he knows he's in San Francisco. Then they tell him, get on the boat. He gets on the boat. Next thing he knows, he's in some tropical paradise called Fiji. And he's training with the local islanders in jungle combat, these Fijian scouts. Apparently, they're all 6 foot tall. They're all 200 plus pounds, which in 1941 was a massive dude. And apparently they are ungodly good at jungle warfare. He said that they would do mock war games and the Fijian scouts would just wait till night, so the Americans would have triple the normal amount of security, and somehow the Fijian scouts would still sneak into their camp and take markers and just put lines across people's necks while they were sleeping, simulating I would have just killed you with a knife in your sleep.
Damn!
I have a dick on my face, don't I?
And this is initially who's teaching him and all the rest of his guys how to operate in a jungle environment. And then when he's not training, he's still doing his pseudo chaplain thing. He's leading little prayer groups, religious services. He's counseling guys that are having trouble with stuff back home or just trouble in general. And that's what he does. And this goes on for months. And then one day they tell him, all right, get on the boats. From here, his ship kind of goes around the Pacific on these search and destroy missions. Basically, Navy intelligence is triangulating where Japanese radio signals are coming from on these.
Alvin York was convinced to go to war by his CO originally. He was a conscientious objector like Dawes. That's right. Now it's coming back to me. He had his CO, had some back for. Yeah, that's right. His CO did. He quoted, like, I forget what the Bible verse was. Yeah. Like, he was trying to say, like, no, I don't want to go to war. It's against, it's against my faith. And then his CO literally quoted him back that Bible verse and basically turned his mind to, oh, that's right, I've got to be on a mission from God. Yeah, it was the Bible verse rap battle, effectively. Yeah, that's right. Thank you for reminding me.
Basically, Navy intelligence is triangulating where Japanese radio signals are coming from on these little tiny itty-bitty islands out in the ocean where the Japanese have left small contingencies of men that are basically just trying to track American ship and airplane movements and radioing it back to their intelligence. So they're triangulating where these guys are. They go in and destroy their outpost. Logan winds up going out on a couple of these missions, but all the outposts that he finds have already been abandoned, so they just destroy the equipment and head back to the ship. While that's going on, they celebrate Christmas of 1942 on the ship. They don't get any special food because the supply ship was sunk by an enemy submarine.
This is the worst.
Yeah.
Shortly after that, his convoy gets attacked by an enemy submarine, and he's on the deck watching the entire thing as the American Navy sinks this Japanese submarine, and this is like his defining, oh shit, this is for real moment. In his words, and I quote, "For the first time I realized that I was on my way to kill or be killed." Shortly after this, they are informed that they're going to be partaking in the first major Allied offensive against the Japanese by making an amphibious landing on an island known as Guadalcanal. Logan is then individually notified / congratulated because he is receiving a battlefield commission and he is now going to become a lieutenant. He's an officer now. He is then immediately informed that the platoon that he's taking charge of is going to be the first ones to land at Guadalcanal. Okay, just so we're on the same page, from his perspective, you have to appreciate this. He's basically just been told he's going to lead the first 30 men into combat on offense against the Japanese, and he got promoted to do it. So in the back of his head, he's got to be thinking like, okay, either A, they think I'm awesome.
Yeah. Typically speaking, the first unit to do an invasion force, they're usually the first ones to get wiped out. You never, like when you're doing a full-blown attack, you never want to be the first units in because your entire unit's probably going to be nuked off the face of the planet. Yeah.
Probably not very likely considering I have no combat experience. B, I just got promoted to be a sacrificial lamb.
Yep.
Boom! Buh! But if he celebrated Christmas on his ship in 1942, he couldn't have. Shut up! I know what you're gonna say. Just shut up. You're gonna ruin the story. I'm gonna address it, all right? Buh.
I love it.
All right, they make it to Guadalcanal. They board the amphibious landing ships. Logan and his platoon are the first ones in the first ship. They're making their way towards the island. They're getting closer and closer and closer. And then the door on the Higgins boat drops. And like, this is it. This is the moment. Adrenaline's high. This is the moment he's supposed to run out of that Higgins boat onto the beach, engage the enemy in combat, and get revenge for Pearl Harbor. And that's exactly what he goes to do. He's the first one off that Higgins boat. As he runs, jumps off that door into the water, immediately sinks up to his neck in the ocean. Okay, wind immediately taken out of his sails. Cool guy moment, gone forever, and it is now turned into an oh shit moment as he desperately tries to run through the ocean to get to this beach as fast as he can. Which obviously isn't very fast, but luckily they're not taking enemy gunfire or artillery or anything, so they all make it to the beach. He establishes a beachhead, gets all of his men accounted for, and then they kind of wait for some more people to make the landing on the beach, and then they push further inland. At this point, Logan and probably everybody else is thinking in their head like, okay, well, this is supposed to be a major battle. We're the first Americans to land.
Did they go to the wrong area? Did they go to the wrong fucking beachhead? Something tells me that something tells me that's what's happened. I'm wait for it. Okay. I'll wait for it. And thank you, Chupto. Thank you for the sub.
To engage the enemy. Where are these guys? We know they're here. We're about to walk face first into an ambush. That's what's about to happen. Anxiety is very high. But hey, somebody's got to do it. So they go. They push further inland, waiting for this ambush to come. And after a couple hundred yards, they find the enemy. Or what's left of the enemy. There's dead guys and chunks of dead bad guys everywhere that's been left rotting out in the sun. There's supplies scattered all over the place. Anything that even slightly resembled a structure has been completely destroyed. Somebody has already been here and just laid waste to this entire thing. So they kind of just take up a holding position and wait for orders, and then, you know, word comes down, they get everything figured out. Apparently the Marines have beat the Army here by like 2 months.
Oh my God! That is too fucking funny. Marines are like, what the fuck took you so long? Walking hoorah, base Marines.
Come, Gimli! We're gaining on them!
I'm wasted on cross-country. We dwarves are natural sprinters.
Sidebar, I love this part of the story because all I can think about is the TV show The Pacific, when the Army shows up after the Marines have already been there, and the Marines show up and raid all the Army supplies because they're starving. Also worth mentioning, his Army unit was not the first Army unit to make it to the island either, okay? The Marine Corps made it there on August 7th, 1942. The Army got there in October of 1942. He celebrated Christmas on his ship in 1942.
Oh my
then
God.
went out on some more search and destroy missions on different islands. His unit doesn't even get there till like April of 1943. The Guadalcanal campaign is declared a victory in February.
Missed it by that much.
Ken, I know what you're thinking. Why? Why would you tell the story that way if you knew this all along? Okay? Couple of reasons. Reason number one, it pisses off the keyboard warriors, and I love doing that. It's like my second favorite pastime after shitting on communism. And two, you have to realize this is a story from the first person perspective, which is an incredible way to learn history. Could I have just used the internet and the hindsight being 2020 thing to be like, yeah, he showed up to Guadalcanal 7 months after the Marines got there, and the battle was pretty much over by the time he got there, and then moved on with the story? Yeah, I could have, but then you don't get a proper grasp on how incredibly confusing and misinformed a singular person on the battlefield can be in regards to the information that they have at the time. And you would never be able to understand that while the battle was already over by the time he got there, he didn't know that at the time. So when that door on the Higgins boat dropped, he was fully expecting to get lit up by enemy machine gun fire. Once he fell in the ocean and was wading through neck-deep water, he was expecting to get shot in the head by an enemy sniper at any moment. So while in reality, hindsight being 2020, he was never actually in any danger other than maybe drowning in the ocean, he still performed an incredible act of bravery. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Guadalcanal, the battle, like I said, ended in February. The main battle is wrapped up for the most part. The only thing left is there's small squads and individual guys or groups of 2 and 3 that are out in the jungles conducting guerrilla warfare. So he does go out on multiple patrols trying to find these guys, and on one occasion, he does. He takes his men out. They're patrolling through this really dense jungle. They're in a single file line on this narrow path through the jungle. He rounds a bend and literally bumps into 3 Japanese soldiers, and immediately, before he even knows what happens, shoots all 3 of them. After inspecting the bodies inside of the helmets of one of the dead Japanese soldiers, he finds a family picture of him, his wife, and his child, and it eats him alive. He prays about it a ton. He didn't want to kill anybody. He knows that, but ultimately he just comes to accept what he already knew the moment he saw that submarine go down. It was kill or be killed. Once they get back from patrol, he winds up telling his commander everything that happens. He's expecting like a good job, and attaboy, you took out 3 of the enemy. I sent you out into the jungle to find him. You found him. You did your job. Good job. That's not what he gets. He gets a tremendous ass chewing from his commanding officer, because there's no reason that an officer should have been out in front. He should have had, you know, his lower enlisted men.
Oh, fuck ass. Oh my God. Yeah, how many times have we said it? How many fucking times have we said it? The bureaucratic bullshit is what fucks things up more than anything. Yeah, it's like what's the one thing that we see with everyone in Nick Storts? These leaders who lead from the fucking front lead troops that kick fucking ass. The leaders who will basically lead by example. They are at the front. They are hard charging. They will have their men will fucking nuke the fucking planet for leaders like that. They will burn the enemy to ash for a leader like that. They will literally do anything for them. When you have an officer that leads from the front, that leads by example, that basically is one of the men. Like he doesn't put himself on a pedestal above the men, but he is like, I am one of you. I want you to trust me to get you through this, and to prove that I'm no better than you. I'm gonna be right there in the shit and the mud, right alongside you the whole time. And those men look at a leader like that like he is a fucking god. And they will do anything. They will move heaven and earth for a leader like that. And it pisses me off every time the bureaucracy looks at it and goes, you're doing it all wrong. You should be in the back hiding. And it's like, that's not what inspires greatness in your soldiers.
Leading the way, and his life should have never even been at risk. He should have let somebody else do that for him. And Logan pushes back against the commanding officer. He's like, I'm sorry, I thought I was commissioned to lead my troops, not drive them. And this pretty much solidifies his leadership style of, he basically made a vow to himself that he's never going to ask one of the men under his command to do something that he wasn't willing to do himself. From here, the next 2.5 to 3 months that he spends on Guadalcanal, he's still going out on patrols. He does get involved in some more skirmishes, but they don't need everybody patrolling the jungle, so they end up doing a ton more jungle warfare training. And when he's not doing that, in his free time, he pretty much gives all of his time to being a pseudo-chaplain to all the men, because obviously not a lot of religious leaders on Guadalcanal at the time. And unfortunately, this is that point in the war where a lot of soldiers start getting Dear John letters from back home where their wives or fiancés or girlfriends are leaving them for somebody else. And he's doing everything he can to help those guys through it. And this is where he really starts to pick up his nickname, the Fighting Preacher, or Preacher for short. Then after about 3 months, they get the orders, get on the boats, we're gonna go invade another island, and this time, it's for real.
Allegedly.
All right, July 3rd, 1943, they board the ship. Once they get on the ship, they start telling everybody the plan. We're going over to a nearby island called New Georgia. There's an airstrip on the island. We got to take the airstrip. The obvious spot of attack is
strategically putting the person who gives the orders in the front is wise aspiration, how they lost the Revolutionary War. Counterpoint to that statement. The British with the Revolutionary War, the person giving the orders wasn't simply in the front leading the charge. They were on horseback, elevated above everyone else, and thus making them a very prime target. So it's not that they were in the front giving the orders and everything like that, giving the orders and fighting with their men. No, they were on horseback while all of their men were on foot, thus having them in an elevated position, very, very easily identifying them, and thus making them said prime target.
Going to be the south side of the island, so under the cover of night, we're going to sail right past the south side of the island, and we're going to land on the north side of the island to catch the enemy by surprise. Once we get there, we'll open up with a naval bombardment to soften up the landings. You'll board the Higgins boats, and then you'll go take the island. That's the plan. Fast forward 3 o'clock in the morning, July 4th, 1943. They're here. It's time to go. We're going to make the landings. The Allied forces open up with this gigantic naval bombardment, and it has the opposite of the desired effect. It does not silence the enemy. It's more like stirring up a hornet's nest. Within a matter of minutes, enemy airplanes are in the air. They're dropping flares over the ships, so now it's basically broad daylight, even though it's 3 o'clock in the morning. And Preacher and the rest of the guys can now see that the Japanese are shooting artillery back at them as well. Then the destroyer that they're on starts zigzagging because there's enemy submarines in the area, and within a matter of a couple of minutes, the entire ship gets rocked, presumably by an enemy torpedo, and within minutes, they're calling to abandon ship. Okay, now we got a big problem because the Higgins boats aren't here yet. Okay, now typically the Higgins boats are stored inside of another ship or on top of another ship, and then they're craned off, lowered into the water, and somebody drives the Higgins boat up next to the destroyer or the troop transport. They drop that cargo netting down the side, and the guys climb down the cargo netting and get in the Higgins boats. We don't have time for all that shit. They didn't give us a timeline. They said, get off the ship. So Logan and pretty much everybody else just start jumping overboard with their full kit. Backpack, gun, ammunition,
Jesus.
everything they need to take on a mission. They're just jumping into the ocean at 3 o'clock in the morning. Luckily, the Higgins boats were already on their way, so they wind up meeting up with the Higgins boat in the ocean, and the guys in the Higgins boat pull him up top. Logan gets himself and all of his platoon
Thank
into
God.
the Higgins boat, and last he knew, the order was to take New Georgia, so that's where they head. They make it to the beach. It is enemy machine gun fire everywhere. There's enemy planes overhead trying to drop bombs on them, and it's like this coral ground that they can't even dig into, so all the guys are just finding any tiny little depression they can and trying to hide in it. As this battle rages on, Logan gets all
That I have heard, like I've heard from like my parents when I was growing up, and like when I was when I was back in school growing up, and we were learning doing U.S. history, learning about World War II, and I was with I think it was with my dad when we were like going over some lessons and basically check my work, stuff like that. And he was telling me about how like stories of World War II. No, my dad was not a part of World War II, but through his own education, and his father was not his father. Someone that his father knew was in World War II, I believe. And they were telling stories. But his mother or great grandfather, I can't remember. Like, I can't remember if it was his father, his great grandfather. I can't remember. But was like telling stories about how like these guys, when they like were during like World War II, that when Nick was just saying, like they try to get into like any depression that they could. This was like you hear stories from like World War I or World War II veterans, maybe even some more modern day veterans, like from Vietnam, where when they're coming under heavy fire, like these are guys that literally try to cram their entire bodies into their helmets. Like that's like that was the extreme level of, oh fuck, I have to hide. Like they didn't care that obviously physics.exe says, I don't fucking think so. They're still like literally trying to just hide their entire body under their steel helmet or under their Kevlar helmet, whatever the case might be. It's like, it's insane what psychology does to a soldier in the middle of the heat of combat like that. It's like, it's just thinking about the mindset that a soldier would have in that moment, like so fucking scared that you're thinking, I've got to cram my entire body into my helmet, even though it is physically not possible. Like that is a level of terror that a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of people can actually profess to experience it. It's, I mean, just thinking about it it's just incredible. Like what these men had to do, because I imagine a lot of the men on this beach that Nick is describing right now tried to do exactly what I was just saying and try to crawl into their helmet for protection.
This platoon accounted for, everybody made it to the beach, which is great. Then he moves on to, assembling the bigger picture of the battlefield. He's the officer. He has to know what's going on to tell his men what to do. And he starts looking for the other officers. He can't find any. And he starts to realize that 2/3 of his battalion made it to the beach and another third didn't. And in that third that didn't is apparently most of the other officers. And he is now in charge of the rest of this battalion, even though he's only a second lieutenant. Daylight comes, they fight tooth and nail all day long, agonizingly slow, and by evening on that first day, they've managed to get about 300 yards deep on the beach and about a mile wide. That's their beachhead. That's all they've got. By this point, other high-ranking officers have made it onto the beach, and they make the call that they're not going to keep pushing into the jungle as the sun's going down, because it just seems like a bad idea to follow the enemy into the jungle in the dark. So they decide to set up security for the night, and they're going to handle the rest in the morning. Morning comes around, Logan gets the order that he's supposed to reestablish contact with the enemy, aka go fucking get him. From here, they basically use this beachhead as a base and conduct patrols into the jungle looking for the enemy. Logan doesn't go into great detail of like play-by-play of what happens every single patrol, but he does say during this period of time, all of his men picked up the habit of shooting and or bayoneting every dead Japanese guy they saw, because they figured out pretty quick that the Japanese like to pretend to be dead and then try to shoot you in the back after you walk by.
I mean, that was, we've seen other Nick videos before. I believe it was it the Marines themselves? I think it might have been his video about the, was it 77th ID? I couldn't remember if it was 77th ID or Marines, where they basically said, if you see a dead Japanese soldier, kill it again, because you don't know if it's gonna pop up. It was the 77th ID? Okay. There you go. 77th ID that did this. There you go.
He also said during this period of time, he and his men became experts in clearing out Japanese machine gun nests. As soon as that Japanese machine gun would open fire, everybody would hit the deck. They'd return so much suppressing fire that the Japanese couldn't look up to man the gun. And while they were keeping their heads down, somebody would run up there with grenades and clear them out. This goes on every day for about 2 weeks straight. And then his platoon gets relieved by a Marine unit and they get sent back to the beach to get some R&R and then wait for new orders. After a couple of days of hanging out on the beach, new orders come down, and here's basically what's going on the island at this point. The Japanese have brought in reinforcements to defend this airfield, and the Marine and the Army units that are trying to take the airfield are basically stuck in a stalemate. So Logan and his battalion are being sent in, okay? Battalion, not company, not platoon, battalion. Like 900 guys are being sent in, and their job is going to be to block the main supply road leading to this airport to cut off Japanese supplies so it weakens them so they can take over this airfield. The problem, it's like 17 miles away, and there are no roads. They're going to have to traverse 17 miles of this jungle island terrain to get there. So they set off carrying 5 days worth of food and water on their backs, and it is absolutely miserable. It's either cliffs made out of coral like this, or it's dense jungle, or it's swamps. Pretty much the entire 900-man element is marching through potentially enemy territory in a single file line. It is a slow and painful journey, and the entire way they're rotating out which platoon is at the very front leading point. When it's time for Logan's platoon to lead point, he's got a couple of scouts out in front of him, then it's him, and then 900 guys behind him in a straight line walking through the enemy jungle. They're like an hour into his shift at leading point, and all of a sudden he hears a gunshot from out in front of him. Logan and pretty much everybody else hits the dirt, assuming they're getting ambushed, and then after a couple of seconds, nothing. No more gunshots. It's just quiet. After a couple of seconds, Logan gets absolutely pissed. He's thinking in his head like, okay, one of my scouts just shot at an animal or accidentally dropped his gun and fired off a round while we're trying to sneak 900 guys through enemy-held territory and risk everybody's lives. I got to go up there and see what the fuck is going on. So he marches up there, finds his scout, and he's about to chew this guy out, basically asks him, what just happened? Why are you shooting your gun? And then up above him in the trees, he hears something falling and rustling around in the trees, and it's making its way down, and then a Japanese rifle falls right at his feet in front of him and the scouts. And then something even bigger starts rustling in the trees, making its way down, and then a dead Japanese soldier falls right on top of the rifle, and the scout looks at him and goes, I didn't have enough time to take the shot I wanted. I'm pretty sure he was aiming at you. And Logan's like, all right, good. Good work. Carry on. After that, the formation
man.
is making this arduous journey towards the objective, and it takes them 4 days straight to cover 17 miles. But eventually, they make it to the objective, they identify the trail, then they backtrack, they find a small knoll, they dig trenches, they set up a defensive fighting position in case they get attacked, and then they're going to be able to launch ambushes on this trail to shut down the Japanese supply lines. And pretty much as soon as they get their trenches dug, they get attacked instead. They repel multiple attacks all day and all night, and then it starts raining. And they repel multiple attacks the next day, and it keeps raining. And by the time they realize how dire their situation actually is, the rain and the tropical humidity has destroyed the batteries in the radio, and they have no contact with the outside world. By this point, they have been attacked from every direction and know that they are completely surrounded and totally outnumbered. And if that wasn't bad enough, they only brought 5 days worth of food with them, and it took them 4 days to get here. And it keeps raining.
We've been through every kind of rain there is.
And this goes on for days, just sitting in a trench in the rain, can't get up, can't look out, completely surrounded. Sometimes they're launching bonsai attacks, they'll repel the attack, but that's it. They can't go anywhere. They're just stuck, held there by the enemy. And then eventually days turn into weeks. Everybody is starving. The only water they're getting is by taking their canteen cups and catching rain to drink it. They start eating any edible plant that's anywhere nearby. They're doing everything they can to survive, but they are actually starving to death. It's absolutely awful. Guys are sitting in trenches that are full of water. They're getting trench foot. They're getting other skin infections. Guys are getting sick. They're all starving. And to make things worse, the Japanese bodies that have been out there for over a week or 2 weeks at this point are starting to rot in the tropical humidity, and it reeks. Logan's doing everything he can for the men in his platoon, going from foxhole to foxhole, trying to check in on everybody at least once a day to give everybody words of reassurance, but he knows it's looking bleak, and so do they. At the beginning of the 3rd week of being surrounded, cut off, and starving, Logan wakes up with this big-ass beetle on his chest, and this beetle kind of flares its wings open to take off, and when it does that, a single grain of rice falls onto his chest, and he's just kind of looking at it, and he has an epiphany. The Japanese soldiers probably have sacks of rice on them for food. That night, under the cover of darkness, Logan grabs a couple of guys, they crawl out into no man land and start scavenging bags of rice off the dead Japanese soldiers and bring it back and distribute it amongst all the men. It's not much, but it's the only thing they've had in weeks and the only thing that keeps them going. On the 27th day, the battalion commander calls the officers in for a meeting because he's got some news, and most of the other officers are too sick, wounded, or dead to even show up. And Logan isn't doing great himself. He's lost a ton of weight, he's sick, he's sucking just like everybody else, but for some reason, he's in the best shape. So he pretty much gets given this mission by default. The commander basically tells Logan that by now, 27 days later, there was another massive army unit that was supposed to land nearby. He wants to send Logan out with some guys and see if he can find this unit and get help. Obviously, Logan's platoon, or any platoon for that matter in the battalion, isn't capable of doing this mission by themselves, so Logan has to go around and just pick anybody that's physically capable of maybe traversing this jungle for miles on end. And out of the 900 men they came with, he finds 34 guys that might be able to do it. So they take off, they're not moving.
Honestly, it's insane that they didn't get overrun. As a horrible shape as they are in, that he only can find 34 guys that are in a condition enough to just do a mission like this. The rest of them are either dead or out of commission, effectively speaking. The fact that they have not been overrun by the Japanese is, you suspect the Japanese were just as bad off? I don't know. Because don't forget, this is their territory. They're kind of used to this. So I think that, and leave us not forget, the Japanese have their bases located here. They have their food stores. It's like these guys just went off with 5 days supplies. The Japanese might have heavier food stores because it is their island. It is their land. They cut off the road supply. The kind of is the keynote to distinction. Now, who knows? Nick may finish telling this particular part of the story, and they were in just as bad shape. Who knows? This is just a horror show all on its own right now.
fast, but hey, they're moving. And shockingly enough, they don't actually run into the enemy. His best guess is that army unit did land somewhere nearby, and these guys have all been diverted to go handle them. After about 6 miles of traversing this jungle, they hear footsteps off in the distance. He orders his guys off the trail. They only go a couple feet off the trail. The jungle's so thick, nobody's going to be able to see them. They'll be able to walk right by. And as these guys go walking by, they're Americans. Logan and his guys make contact, and these guys are actually out looking for what they called the Lost Battalion.
Right here.
Ah,
Yeah, that's it.
From here, they double back, they grab even more fresh guys, then Logan takes them back to his battalion. They get everybody evacuated to a safe area on the island and get everybody medical treatment. Bear in mind, Logan is one of the guys in the best shape out of this 900, and it takes him 3 weeks to recuperate, to regain weight, and get all of his skin and foot problems healed up. And on the second week of his recuperation, he gets some mail addressed to him, and it is post-dated 14 months prior. So the mail is finally reaching him. It's just 14 months late. He got 2 letters. One of them is from mom and dad, and the other one is from his lovely fiance. Mom and dad wrote him to let him know, oh, by the way, we're getting a divorce. Okay, that sucks. Opens up the next letter. Oh, his fiance's leaving him. Perfect. But he's already been through so much shit this past month, it like doesn't even faze him. He's just like numb to everything. He's like Forrest Gump.
One less thing.
By the 3rd week, pretty much everybody in the battalion that isn't gonna need long-term care is in as good a shape as they're gonna get in. They get some new reinforcements, and the battalion is sent back out on a new mission. They're supposed to go out to some hill called Terracaba Hill, like 11 miles away, and establish a defensive fighting position there and just wait for the enemy, I guess. But this time they do have 6 indigenous guys that are going to function as guides for the battalion, and one of them gets assigned to Logan, and this guy's name is Beatty. So Logan, Beatty, the rest of the battalion take off, march their happy asses 11 miles through the jungle, get to Terracaba Hill, and set up a defensive fighting position just like they were instructed to do. And you're never going to guess what happens. They get completely surrounded again almost immediately.
fucking hell.
And this time, it's for 21 days straight. The difference is they're all fairly healthy to begin with, and now they know how to play the game, and they don't give a single fuck about the enemy. Immediately, they're taking all the rice off the dead Japanese soldiers. The native guys are showing them all the tips and tricks that the natives know, like, oh, we can actually eat this type of bark. We can use this plant. It's good seasoning. They're actually cooking different forms of rice. They're like figuring out, oh, if I cook the rice with this bark off this tree, it tastes like chicken broth. And if I use this nut over here, it ends up tasting like oysters. Like they're literally playing Master Chef, seeing who can come up with the best local cuisine while they're in an active firefight for 21 days straight.
Real, hearty, rustic, wholesome.
I realize how insane.
Okay, hold up. Nick, I love you. Your clips are fantastic. But I'm sorry. Why did you not have Gordon there going? Why did you not have the clip of Gordon going, finally, some good fucking food? That would have been so much better to have that clip of Gordon versus like party, rustic. No, have Gordon there going, finally, some good fucking food.
It sounds that these guys are just like having a frat party in the middle of this firefight, but I'm going to read you a direct quote from Logan. Quote, between lulls and firing, we would argue in defense of our culinary opinions. We refuse to let the enemy disturb us. If he came too close, he would be the recipient of a burst of machine gun or rifle fire. If he prowled at night, he would be sure to intercept a grenade.
Bye-bye. Oh, look out. Thank you for coming by. Have a good day. I'm going to go enjoy my wad.
He then goes on to say, and I quote, we were surrounded, but it just didn't bother us anymore. By the 19th day, apparently the battalion commander decides that the party needs to come to an end. He needs somebody to go penetrate behind enemy lines, make contact with an allied unit, and, come in and clean this situation up. Logan Weston basically gets assigned the task because he is the most experienced patrol officer in the battalion. He gets given 33 of the best in shape guys, and he takes his local guide, Beatty, with him. From here, Logan and Beatty and the other 30 guys with him all get together in an area, and then a bunch of the other guys in the battalion get ready, and they've identified the weakest spot in the enemy line. The battalion lays down a bunch of covering fire. They punch through this weak spot in the enemy line, and these 30 guys plus Beatty and Logan disappear into the jungle. Once they really get moving, Beatty is absolutely incredible. This guy is having them ducking and dodging and avoiding the Japanese left and right. They're like invisible ghosts in the jungle under this guy's guidance. After about 4 miles, they get to a spot where they need to exercise a little bit more caution. And remember, Logan's the kind of commander where he's not going to ask anybody to do anything he wouldn't do himself. So he grabs Beatty, and those two take off to scout everything beforehand to make sure it's not an enemy ambush. They're making their way down this trail. Logan turns a corner, and off in the distance, he sees a Japanese soldier, and the Japanese soldier is raising his rifle and pointing it at Logan. Logan, realizing that he's about to lose a quick draw contest, immediately drops to his knees and hip fires towards the guy. Doesn't hit him, but it scares the guy enough that he jumps into the brush. And from here, all hell breaks loose. There's rifle fire and machine gun fire coming from the left, the right, down the trail, absolutely everywhere. They turn and start running. They dive off the trail. They wind up making their way into this swamp and swim through and hide in this swamp. After they're convinced that they lost him, they climb out of this swamp. Immediately, he realizes, like, I've had so much adrenaline pumping, I'm not sure if I've been shot or if Beatty's been shot. So they wipe the mud off Beatty, check him out. He's perfectly fine. Then they start wiping the mud off him. He's got a bullet hole in his helmet right above his right eye. Oh shit. Takes the helmet off, checks his head. The bullet had entered the helmet and skirted around the helmet till it lost velocity. Didn't even touch him. Continues checking himself out. He's got a bullet wedged in the heel of his boot. Another bullet had apparently cut the watch off of his wrist and grazed him. And a fourth bullet had apparently glanced off of one of his frag grenades, and he was completely fine.
Holy fuck!
We should be fucking dead, man.
So they start making their way back to their platoon, and Beatty is just like blown away talking to Logan like, wow, your god must be really powerful to be able to protect you like that. I need to know more about this guy. Like, can I worship this god? Can I be part of the club? What do I got to do?
Hey,
and
boy.
Logan, AKA Preacher, is like, yeah, man, of course you can. Just, accept God as your, Lord and Savior and love him. He'll love you back. Bada bing, bada boom. You're a Christian. Hearing that, Beatty's in. So like him and Logan stop for a minute. They say a prayer together. And in Beatty's mind, he is now like a complete reborn again Christian. And from his perspective, he now thinks that he's basically immune to bullets. So he's so excited and pumped that he starts singing and dancing loudly as they're walking back to the guys through enemy territory. And Logan is trying to get this guy to shut the fuck up, but he can't because now he thinks that bullets don't affect him. And then, as fate would have it, apparently him singing scares a group of parrots or some kind of fucking bird, and they take off and start squawking, and the birds apparently scared a bunch of monkeys, and then the monkeys start running around screeching, and the next thing you know, all of the wildlife in the area is running around making a shit ton of noise, and apparently this convinces the Japanese that a much larger element of guys is headed their direction, so they're able to make it back to his platoon without a single shot being fired, and then the platoon is able to make it back to the battalion under the cover of all this noise.
Oh my fucking god! I'm sorry, you're not gonna beat the allegations that literally DD was invincible by the literal grace of God. And what?
Put on the food. Oh my god! I love you, God!
They're back at the hill with the battalion for 2 days before the battalion commander decides, fuck this, we gotta punch through and reconvene with this bigger army unit so we can get out of here. They march the entire battalion into the jungle with Logan leading point the entire time, and for 4 days they launch multiple attacks on different spots on the enemy line, trying to punch through. And again, as fate would have it, on the 4th day, other army units and Marines launched their attack on the airfield on the island, which caused all the Japanese in the area to fall back to defend the airfield, and they were finally able to punch through. They're able to reconnect with the 25th Infantry Division. Those other units were able to take the airfield, and the New Georgia campaign is essentially over. Logan's battalion gets put on R&R for the next 2 weeks, where his main goal is to try to regain some weight, because over the course of this campaign, he's gone from 185 pounds to 119 pounds. After that, his unit gets sent back to Guadalcanal, where they're going to get new reinforcements, new equipment, everything they need to accept their new mission. And after 3 days on being in Guadalcanal, Logan hears about a call going out requesting guys with extensive jungle warfare experience to go on a super dangerous secret mission. They're not even going to tell you what it is unless you accept it. Logan hears this and is like, I mean, my fiance just left me, my parents are getting a divorce, and I just had a party in the jungle for the past 21 days. Fuck it, why not? I'll go.
We bowling.
Within 24 hours of volunteering for this dangerous mission, he is then told to get on a boat. That boat takes him to an island. Then they stop there for a little bit. Then they go to another island, then another island. And the next thing he knows, he's in Australia. Everybody's talking funny. He's there for a little bit. Then they tell him to get on the boat again. They take him to some place called India. And he is like, what the fuck is going on here?
I was like, what the fuck? Gun store, liquor store, gun store. Where the fuck are you taking me?
They start boarding all these beat up rickety trains going from place to place, and there's just extreme poverty everywhere at these train stations. Nobody speaks English. It's overwhelming. This dude was born in a cabin in the woods in 1914 up in Pennsylvania. He doesn't have the internet. He's never seen the Indian street food vendor videos. He's just completely overwhelmed. And he still has no
He's never seen the Indian poop throwing ceremonies either. Wait. Okay. I have no idea how old these ceremonies are. What are the odds that he stumbled across this group of Indians engaged in their annual poop throwing festival when he was making his way through India? What are the chances? Realistically, though, this is back in the 1940s. I'm guessing India probably was not as bad as it is today. I'm pretty sure India went through its population explosion in the 1970s. Like, it was obviously, yeah, India was like, back in the 1940s was a dirty place. But I'm guessing their population, pretty sure it was worse. I don't know. Because I don't think they had the population they had back then that they do now. And I'm reasonably sure they went through a population explosion in the 1970s, which has resulted in what we have now with India, where India is like overpopulated right now. Plus, India at this time was under British. Well, there you go. So India was still under British rule. Looking at it, 80-ish years. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Looking at it now, like 80 years later. Yeah. It's poop throwing festivals are going on for over 3 years. So what is the chance that you encounter one of these poop throwing festivals? That would be fucking hilarious. He's trucking down through India on this mission, comes across this village, and they're all slinging shit at one another, and he's like, the fuck am I looking at right now? Considering what he'd been through already, encountering an Indian poop throwing festival probably would not have even fucking fazed him. I legit don't think that it would have even fazed him if he came across that festival, considering what he did, the shit that he went through in the jungle.
Idea where he's going. Eventually, they wind up at some like training area that is within eyeshot of the Taj Mahal, and he's just like, again, imagine growing up in a cabin in the woods in 1914 in Pennsylvania, and the first time you hear or see about the Taj Mahal, it's in person. From here, they just start conducting more jungle warfare training. So now, once all the guys are here, they kind of figure out they got about 3,000 guys. They split them up into 3 different battalions. You've got Alpha, Bravo, and Charlie. From what I understand, Alpha group was basically fresh recruits. Bravo group was new guys that didn't have combat experience, but they had gone through a bunch of jungle warfare training. And Charlie group, which is where Logan winds up getting attached to, is the group of guys that were all recruited from Guadalcanal in the Pacific that have a ton of jungle warfare combat experience. So they get to train in jungle warfare. Obviously, the Charlie group guys are trying to help out the Alpha and Bravo group guys, giving them all the tips, tricks, and pointers that they learned during their actual combat experience. Outside,
particularly which tree bark is most useful when you're cooking rice to make it taste like oysters versus chicken broth. Yeah.
Out of that, they run into another problem. They brought 3,000 guys on this super dangerous volunteer-only mission, and they didn't assign a single chaplain to these guys, so they don't have any religious services or anything. So Logan steps up, and he starts doing it in his free time. And this is where he really solidifies his nickname, the Fighting Preacher. And just so we're all on the same page, if you've never been in the military and you don't know, there's more to being a chaplain in the military than just like giving a religious service on Sunday and letting guys pray with you. It's really important. A lot of the times, even if you don't believe in any God, you still might have to go to the chaplain because they're at times the only resource you have to help resolve family issues. For example,
the chaplain, like Nick Max was saying this, but the way I've always viewed the chaplain functioned as a spiritual leader. And just like in civilian life, with preachers and priests and rabbis and just about every other religious leader, not only do they function as basically someone to lead you in prayer, who can, in the case of Christianity, take confession. Not only that, but they are also, effectively speaking, a moral center for you. If you are feeling like psychologically or morally beaten down, you can go to the chaplain to basically speak with them, to basically just receive advice, to be able to air out your fears, your pains, your angers, and it's someone that will listen to you and then basically comfort you in your time of emotional, like bloodletting, effectively speaking. And so he was, like somebody said in chat, like they function not only as a spiritual leader, but they function also as a therapist. They function as a big brother. They were basically there to ensure that the soldiers just didn't lose their fucking minds because they had all of this psychological warfare happening inside their own heads by their own making and by the makings of the external forces. The chaplain was a way for them to find balance, a way to find their center. You know, for some, it was basically giving the confessions, because how many of them were at war, didn't want to be at war, didn't want to actually kill someone, and now they've committed what they believe to be as a moral sin of thou shalt not murder. And in their eyes, they're like, I've been murdering all these people. I'm going to go to hell. The chaplain was there to basically offer them absolution, offer them forgiveness, and take their confession. And then it was also like, I'm feeling horrible. I feel like I want to end myself. You know, how many guys in war legitimately contemplated taking their own lives? They could go to the chaplain could listen to them, the chaplain could offer the soldier words of wisdom, encouragement, sympathy, and be that, you know, that moral and emotional lifeboat in a sea of depression and anxiety and anger and doubt. So it's like, they are very underappreciated. They mostly just think like, okay, they're just a stand-in for a priest, and that's all they do. All they do is they just pray. No, a chaplain goes, yes, and I know the Bible is very clear, murder and killing are not the same thing, but in the heat of the theater of war, a soldier who has taken God knows how many lives, even during the course of defense, even in defense of the country against evil, they may not see it that way. You know, it's the human mind. The human mind very often doesn't function logically. And these people, you know, these soldiers that are basically shooting enemy soldiers are thinking, oh, the Bible says, you know, the Bible makes a distinction between murder and killing. No, all they hear is, quote, thou shalt not kill, even though that is not the actual commandment. But they just hear in their own heads, thou shalt not kill, and I have killed. They're not making that distinction in their head. And you have to remember, like, this is war. It fucks with your head big time. And so the chaplain could be there to give you that absolution that you desperately need to prevent you from basically just losing your mind and going nuts, either from that or from God knows what other psychological torment. He knows how many of these soldiers went through. So yeah, Nick was saying, like, the chaplain is such a significantly underappreciated position in the military. And Chainbreaker, thank you for the tier 1.
Some of the stuff that Logan actually had to deal with was that you have soldiers getting Dear John letters, their wives are leaving them and divorcing them, and in order for the divorce to go through legally, they need the husband's signature, but because he's in the military, they also need his commanding officer's signature or an officer's signature. So these guys are bringing all these important documents that an officer needs to sign off on to him to handle these issues, because otherwise you're trying to reach out to like generals and dudes that are more worried about the battlefield. I don't have time for your family issues. He even had a guy whose house burnt down back home, and his wife needed to get the husband's signature and the commanding officer's signature so that the insurance would pay out money so his wife could have somewhere to stay. And Logan steps in and fills that void. So he really is doing really important work in his free time. I mean, imagine if you were a soldier going on a super dangerous mission, you don't even know what it is yet, and back home, your wife and kids had the house burned down and you can't get them money until somebody signs a piece of paper for you. That's the most important thing in the world. Also, during this 3 months, they wind up finding out who their commander is, General Merrill, which is where they obviously get their nickname, Merrill's Marauders. And then they find out what their mission is, and it's pretty much absolutely insane. All right, so here's what's going on. The Empire of Japan's trying to take over pretty much all of Southeast Asia and China, and they have basically got China in a bad position. They've essentially cut China off from the rest of the world. There's no way to get supplies in and out of China so they can receive aid from the Allies. So the Allies need to figure out a way to be able to get supplies into China to help them out, and the way they are going to do this is with these guys, Merrill's Marauders. They're going to send them on foot from India into Burma, where they are then going to conduct guerrilla warfare against the Japanese so that they can secure the Burma road and have a way to get stuff in. Okay, it's like 140, 150 miles of the worst terrain imaginable just to get to where the mission actually starts, and then it's another 800 miles of fighting through enemy-held territory. Okay, and I know what you're thinking. If the entire problem is we can't get supplies into this area, how on earth are we going to be able to get these guys food, water?
How are they beating China? You have to remember, at this point in history, China was not the economic powerhouse that it is today. You have to remember, this is the 1940s. The world was an extremely different thing. It was like countries were completely different back then than they are now. Look at Japan. Japan was a massive military powerhouse working with the Nazi Germany. And look, and they were some of the most hated enemies. Like the Japanese back in World War II did some of the absolutely most heinous shit to their prisoners in their concentration camps that would horrify people. If they the people today, if they actually looked into the history of World War II and looked at what the Japanese did to prisoners back in the 1940s, they would throw up. But now look at Japan today. Japan is one of the United States' closest allies. Japan is viewed by the Western world very favorably for a multitude of reasons. One, not the least of which is the joy of anime, which is why I'm able to be a VTuber today. But again, very different. You know, it was a very different world back then. Fuck, look at Germany. Germany used to be the Nazis, one of the most evil people in the history of the world. And look at them today. Today they are allies. Today they're generally speaking venerated as being a country with great fucking beer that makes great knives and makes like some really cool guns. It's again, we're talking about a change of 80 years. Things were very, very fucking different back then than they are today. And back then, China was nowhere even close to being the economic and even military powerhouse that it is today. And that's why the Japanese were able to steamroll them and basically subjugate them until America was able to come in and basically get the supplies running into them.
And ammunition to fight in the jungle, burning 5,000, 6,000, 8,000 calories a day when we can't get supplies there. How is that going to work? Oh, simple. We're just going to airdrop stuff in whenever they need it. Okay, I'm going to say that again, but slower. The plan is to penetrate hundreds upon hundreds of miles into enemy-held jungle. You have no backup. You have no resources other than aerial supply drops. And by the way, every time an aerial supply drop comes, it kind of alerts the enemy as to where you're fucking at.
You have a better bad idea than this?
This is the best bad idea we have, sir. By far.
And then one day they bring in a bunch of officers for a meeting and they ask for a volunteer to accept a very dangerous mission, at which all the officers are kind of looking around like, I thought we already did that. Are you asking me to double down? Like, we're already inside of a very dangerous volunteer-only mission. You want another volunteer inside of that to go on another very dangerous mission?
Well, now they're on double super secret dangerous mission.
Respect to what we're already doing. Nobody volunteers. So the commanding officer, seeing that he has no volunteers, scans the room and sees Logan Weston, who's quite a bit taller than most of the rest of the officers, and everybody knows who he is. That's Preacher. He's got a big name, and everybody knows he has extensive jungle warfare experience. And the commanding officer just says, Preacher, thank you for volunteering. Congratulations, you are now the commanding officer of Charlie Group's INR platoon. Which, if you don't know, INR, Intelligence and Reconnaissance, aka the Scouting Platoon. So basically, it is now going to be the job of Logan and his 30 to 40 man scout platoon to be like 30, 40 miles ahead of the 3,000 man formation, scouting out looking for the enemy. He is basically spearheading this entire mission. Because the INR platoon doesn't actually exist yet, it's just him, the commander, he gets permission to handpick anybody from these 3,000 guys that he wants. He pretty much exclusively picks from Charlie Group because he picks the top 200 guys with the most combat experience and interviews all of them. Out of those 200 that he interviews, he picks the 54 best guys in his opinion, and he makes sure that all of them have some type of religious convictions because he thinks that he wants guys on his side that truly believe that they're protected by God, because that's the only way we're gonna get through this shit. After he builds the platoon, they spend the rest of the time they have training their asses off. They are burning more calories every day training than they're taking in from chow. So they're the most experienced combat guys around. They're the best of the best. They adopt the habit of raiding the chow halls of Alpha and Bravo Group, the inexperienced new guys, and they earn themselves the nickname the Chow Raiders. And that later gets changed to the Ignorant and Rugged Platoon, a play on INR. After training time elapses, they board trains and they head to the border. They're staging up there for a little bit. During this period of time, Logan becomes friends with the battalion surgeon, a guy by the name of Dr. James Hopkins, the great-grandnephew of John Hopkins, you know, like John Hopkins Hospital. Now, up until this point, they've been told the entire time, hey, we've had a bunch of engineers out there. They're already building a road that's supposed to go and hook up to the Burma Road, so you guys are actually going to be able to drive into enemy territory on trucks.
I don't believe you.
That's not what happens. They're working on a road, but it ain't that kind of road yet. Trucks aren't going to be able to make it, so they have to go and unload a bunch of mules off of trains, and they're going to carry all their equipment and ammunition and supplies on mules.
Donkey!
So they get the mules loaded up, and Logan and the INR platoon take off 24 hours before anybody else does. Originally, they've got this like gravel road that was made by the engineers known as the Lido Road. They follow that for about 80 miles. They're running into engineers. The engineers are making coffee for them. It's not that bad. I mean, they're walking with 65-pound rucksacks, so that kind of sucks, but they're not really in enemy territory yet. Very quickly, though, everybody comes to kind of really get annoyed by these mules because, as I'm sure you can imagine, walking in the jungle with a 65-pound rucksack through mountainous terrain gets pretty tiring, so every hour or so they're stopping to take like a 10-minute break, and apparently the mules would see everybody else is stopping and sitting down, and then the mules would also like sit or lay down, and then the mules were incapable of getting back up when they were fully loaded with gear, so every single time they would have to unload the mules, get them stood back up, reload the mules, and pretty soon it turned into the guys that were in charge of the mules weren't actually getting a 10-minute break. They just got to spend 10 minutes unloading and reloading the mules.
Stubborn
Oh, that would
After they get
suck.
to the end of the Lido Road, they just kind of take off into the jungle, headed the general direction of where the enemy is, and by January of 1944, they've traveled about 125 miles. Around this point in time, Logan gets orders that he needs to head east from where he's at because the Chinese are engaging Japanese forces. He needs to try to link up with the Chinese forces, and remember, Logan is about a day ahead of everybody else. So they start making their way there, and then eventually the lead scout notifies Logan that there's somebody up ahead on this trail. They see somebody, so they go, they check it out. It's some Asian guy in some type of uniform. So they kind of like make themselves known, not knowing if it's the Japanese or the Chinese. And then the Asian guy just kind of raises his hand and they think he's waving. They're like, oh shit, we found the Chinese guys. This is awesome.
You serious? You never noticed? Hey, hats off to you for not seeing rays.
And then the Asian guy drops his arm and they start getting lit up by machine gun fire. Remember, this is 54 of the most jungle warfare experienced guys we got. They all hit the deck for a second, and then within a matter of like 2 minutes, they've killed all of the Japanese soldiers that staged this ambush. Okay, just so we're on the same page, this is the first encounter between Merrill's Marauders, or America in general, and the Japanese Empire in Burma. America got ambushed by surprise, proceeded to kill everybody that ambushed them, and Logan's men didn't have a single casualty in return. We're setting a tone right out of the gate. From there, they keep making their way east. They get into some more skirmishes. Eventually, new orders come down. They got new intel. The Chinese are attacking the Japanese at a place called Wallaboom. It's a village that's basically been commandeered by the Japanese. They're using it as an outpost. They've got a ton of supplies there. Perfect target for guerrilla warfare. They're already being attacked by the Chinese on one side, so if Merrill's Marauders can come up from the other side, they'll pinch them in a vice and crush everything. For this, the INR platoon links back up with the rest of the main force. They make their way there. They're being super sneaky, secretive, and the tall grass grass. The Japanese don't know they're there. They're getting a lay of the land. They're checking everything out. And there's this river right by Wallaboom, right next to the road that's going to be the same road the Japanese have to retreat through if the Chinese are able to break through their line. So they get a roadblock set up, and this is a perfect fighting position because if the Japanese want to be able to rush them to engage, they're going to have to run through a river first. We literally have a moat. You couldn't ask for a better fighting position. There's just one flaw with it. The river has this big bend that gets really close to where their roadblock is set up, and if the Japanese can circle around them, cross the river there where it's safe, they'll be able to outflank them. So somebody's going to need to cross the river onto the enemy side and set up a fighting position to defend the flank. And that somebody is the INR platoon. So the INR platoon crosses the river into enemy territory. They get some high ground. They set up a defensive fighting position, and then everybody just kind of waits because now we have to wait for the Chinese to punch through the Japanese lines, and there's really no guarantee that that's going to happen. They got to figure out a way to make sure the Japanese end up retreating so that they can surprise them with this ambush, and the plan they come up with is Merrill's Marauders at this point in time has 14 Nisei, Japanese Americans that have volunteered to go on this mission too, and they are fluent in Japanese. So they start tapping into telephone lines.
Hey, oh my God, are they gonna do like spycraft on this shit and trick them? Oh, that would be awesome if they did that.
And listening in on Japanese conversations, and through doing this, they find out that there's a massive ammo dump inside of Wallaboom.
What is that? We need air support, and we need it now. Roll in strike package Bravo on unknown target. I authenticate Tango Whiskey. Send the Hawk, sir. Okay, send the Hawks over to Killbox 1 Alpha. It's a danger zone.
I love this scene, by the way.
They blow up the ammo depot. Oh shit moment for the Japanese. Now they don't have ammunition to keep fighting. They need to get the fuck out of here, so they go to retreat, and they retreat right into the Marauders. Marauders mow a bunch of them down, then they have to...
And yes, I agree. That scene that we just saw is the best. It is easily the best scene in Transformers. Absolutely. The A-10 scene from the first Transformers movie, without a doubt, probably the best scene in the entire movie.
Retreat from that and go back into the village, and then they start sending out different scouting elements trying to figure out what's going on because now they're sandwiched out of nowhere. Then they come up with a brilliant plan. We're going to send a bunch of guys to go outflank the Marauders by crossing the river on this bend, and they send 90 Japanese soldiers out there to do that, but guess who's already there? The INR platoon. The INR platoon catches them by surprise, mows a bunch of those guys down. They retreat again, and this time they come back with even more guys, but the INR platoon has one Nisei with them, and he can actually hear the Japanese officer yelling orders, so he's literally translating and telling Logan, here's what that guy's saying, they're gonna attack over here, and then they just readjust the machine guns and mow them down all over again. And this goes on for the next 5 hours straight, just farming the enemy for XP. It gets to the point that the INR platoon is surrounded on all 3 sides with the river to their back, and they're running low on ammunition, so Logan hops on the radio and explains the situation. So the main element of Charlie Group gets some mortar guys and some machine gun guys over to that area of the river. They get set up on the opposite end of the river, and the mortars drop a bunch of smoke shells. Then they create a wall of fire, and they're ready with the machine guns. This gives the INR platoon the ability to retreat back across the river, get more ammo, and rejoin those guys, and they form a line there, preventing them from getting flanked. And remember, while all this is happening, the Chinese are still attacking and applying more pressure, forcing the Japanese to either stand their ground and fight them or to turn and run into a wall of lead from the Marauders.
And we were slaughtering the hell out of them, you know. But they weren't backing down, let's put it that way.
Eventually, as I'm sure you can imagine, with 2 forces coming closer together, eventually the American forces and the Chinese forces meet because there's no Japanese forces left. When that happens, there's kind of a lull in the battle, like the Americans are like, hold on. These guys look different. They're wearing different clothes. Hang on a second. The Chinese, on the other hand, apparently did not realize that the Americans looked significantly different from the Japanese, and they opened fire. I couldn't find any documentation saying whether or not any of the Chinese guys got killed, just that a firefight did occur briefly, but then eventually they kind of figured out what was happening and
very briefly.
Cool. Fine, I'll say I'm sorry.
No, be sincere. Like this. I'm sorry.
Regardless, they get it figured out. It's all good now. Wallaboom is officially ours. In the battle for Wallaboom, the Marauders unfortunately suffered 8 men killed in action and an additional 37 that were wounded. In return, however, the Marauders are credited with killing over 800 Japanese soldiers. And the Marauders are just getting started. They go on a guerrilla warfare rampage for like the next 5 months behind enemy lines. They travel over 1,000 miles on foot, kicking ass everywhere they go. But as I'm sure you can imagine, living in the jungle 24/7, doing everything via traveling on foot leads to a lot of people falling out from illness. You got guys getting malaria, dysentery, typhus. Everybody's running a fever to the point that it became standard operating procedure that you had to run a high fever for 3 days straight to even get medical attention for it. Don't get me wrong, they're still kicking ass, but I don't want to give you the wrong impression that it's all sunshine and suppressive fire. This still sucks. These guys are getting fatigued. Focusing back on Preacher and the INR platoon though, there's major battles they get into, but then there's also just going out on patrols and getting in skirmishes, which the INR platoon does a lot of because it's kind of their entire job. And they develop guerrilla warfare tactics that are just peak level fuckery. They would go into areas where they know the enemy is patrolling. They would set up a campsite with a campfire and even leave a mule there, and then they would drop back a little bit, find a position, and set up the machine guns. And then once the Japanese launched their bonsai attack into their campsite, they'd mow them all down. On one occasion, the campsite they set up was so convincing that the Japanese decided to employ a double envelopment tactic, meaning they were going to come at them from both sides, except the INR platoon wasn't there and it was dark, so they literally attacked each other and they took out more of themselves than the INR platoon did.
What an idiot.
In another one of their major battles, the Marauders attack a place known as Napunga. During the opening stages of this fight, the Marauders wind up getting surrounded and they have no way out except one. Prior to the battle, Logan had identified a trail and recommended that he go out there and secure this trail. That way they had a way out if they did get surrounded, and now he is guarding that trail. He proceeds to get in a firefight with the INR platoon for 4 days straight, and ultimately winds up covering the withdrawal of the entire main Marauder force so they can regroup and then go take the objective later on. David Quaid, the official historian for the Merrill's Marauder Association, basically compared this to the Battle of Thermopylae and the 300 Spartans, saying, quote, "The holding action orchestrated by Lieutenant Weston and his INR platoon lasted for 4 days against 3 days at Thermopylae. Leonidas defended his own soil. Weston defended far behind enemy lines. Leonidas lost all of his men. Weston lost none. Athens was burned by Persia, and the 53 men of the INR platoon of the Orange Combat Team saved all of the regiment and the campaign." I cannot stress to you enough how big of a badass Logan Weston is.
Yes.
Okay, I had to get an entirely different book that just covers the entire Merrill's Marauder movement and campaign as a whole. This book is about 3,000 men and the movements and combat actions of humongous military elements, and inside of this book, he is mentioned by name 14 times. He's not a general, he's not a colonel, he is a platoon leader, and he is mentioned 14 times by name.
No, what he is a fucking badass. You do not get a 14-time mention about an entire division without being an absolute badass.
That is how pivotal of a role Logan Weston and the INR platoon played in the Merrill's Marauder campaign. Over the course of this campaign, remember, these guys are living in the jungle the entire time. There's no showers. They're just getting food dropped to them out of airplanes. Many of the original Marauders either fall in battle or they succumb to illness. Only 175 to 200 of the original Marauders actually make it all the way through the campaign. And Logan winds up getting medevaced during the final mission. For this mission, the Marauders need to go take out an airfield known as Machina. The problem, it is 400 miles away with the Cumon Mountains in between them. At times, the terrain these guys had to traverse was so steep, they had to take their e-tools, those little shovels, and beat steps into the sides of mountains to be able to climb over it. Logan and the rest of the Marauders make it across these mountains. Once they get to the other side, Logan goes out on patrols, doing his thing with the INR platoon. That's his entire job. And during one of these patrols, he winds up getting blown up with a hand grenade. He gets medevaced, he's in the hospital for 2 weeks recovering, and while he's in the hospital, he gets word that Machina had fallen to the Marauders, but there's still a ton of cleanup to do, which is his specialty, so he volunteers to go back out, which he does.
I could do this all day.
Oh, you thought he was done when I said—
Damn, I thought we were gonna get a clip of I didn't hear no bell. Like, I kind of wish that he used an I didn't hear no bell clip instead of I can do this all day.
he got medevaced during the final mission. Nah. He goes back into combat for 6 more weeks, leading the INR platoon in patrols, cleaning out the area. After 6 weeks, he gets medevaced a second time, and the official thing written on his medical documentation is AOE, accumulation of everything. Like the medics took one look at this guy and said, "What's wrong with you?" "Oh shit, what isn't wrong with you?" Once he gets to the hospital, he is told that he has 6 months left to live and rushed back home to America. Okay, spoiler alert, obviously he survives.
Oh, I'm so happy! I'm so happy! This is the best day of my life!
The Marauder campaign ends shortly after this. Machinna was their last major battle. Under the leadership of Logan Weston, the INR platoon is officially credited with scouting 1,250 miles of jungle, participating in 18 battles. They suffered 4 men killed in action, 5 wounded, and in return, the battalion credited this singular platoon with killing 1,260 enemy soldiers.
Wow.
So Logan winds up getting medevac, they ship him back to America, and this journey takes weeks, and during the course of that journey, he is placed under the care of a doctor that's traveling with him and a bunch of other wounded soldiers, and that doctor is his buddy, Dr. James Hopkins. Once making it back to America, he remains under the care of Dr. James Hopkins. Despite being only given 6 months to live, he makes a full recovery. Which, I mean, obviously, A, he's under the care of a Hopkins, which is basically American medical royalty, and B, it's Logan Weston, the fighting preacher. He's gonna do whatever he wants at this point. After
Jay, I was fully expecting Nick to go, he's the main character, of course he's going to survive. Because if there's anything that we've learned from Nick's stories, when you're talking about the main character, not a fucking thing is going to stop him.
Getting discharged from the hospital, him and Dr. Hopkins get debriefed, and they're basically told, hey, here's the deal. We haven't told the American people an awful lot about what you guys were doing over in Burma. It's kind of hush-hush. Don't ever talk about this again, like for the rest of your life. Now, obviously, they're not the only ones getting debriefed. This is like one officer telling an auditorium of Merrill's Marauders this, and all the enlisted guys, for the most part, are like, okay, sounds good. I'm going back home to the farm. They all leave. James Hopkins and Logan Weston stay in the room, and they're like, that's bullshit. I should be allowed to talk about my life experiences. I'm gonna do it. They are then promptly taken to the office.
Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. He literally just did the Russian Badger joke. This man is going to be the epitome of the Russian Badger joke, where it was the whole joke about War Thunder is like, please do not leak us any classified documents. It's kind of turbo illegal. We can't use them. And then that one chatter, I'm a leak shit.
Of another high-level commander where they get into an argument and then they wind up getting basically placed on house arrest in a local hotel and held there until they figure out what to do with them. After a couple of days of being locked in this hotel room and having different conversations with the chain of command, they come to the agreement that, okay, here's the deal. You can talk about it, but you can only talk about the stuff that's already been put out in the newspapers and in the press. And they're like, okay, hear me out. I've been in the jungles of Burma. I have no idea what's been in the newspapers the past 3 years. So they go and get like 3 years worth of newspapers and press and bring it to the hotel room and tell them, read all you want. That's what you're allowed to talk about. If it's not in there, please don't talk about it. Logan and James agree to these terms, and they spend the next couple of days reading through all these newspaper articles and magazines and everything else. Okay, and if you were in the military, I know what you're thinking. This story is completely BS because there's no way the chain of command is going through all this effort to appease 2 random guys that aren't willing to follow orders. And you know what? You're probably right 99.9% of the time. We gotta realize this isn't 2 random guys. This is 1 random guy who happens to be friends with the heir to Johns Hopkins Hospital, probably the most famous medical institution in America. And if that guy gets thrown in Leavenworth because he wants to talk about his military experience overseas, it's gonna be a PR nightmare. So I'm assuming that's why they got this much leeway. Anyways, they get all that sorted out, then they get given 30 days of leave. James.
Well, I'd also like to think, like, there's been a recording of Logan Weston's exploits in theater. Like, all of this has been recorded. We know that he's received a bunch of medals. Like, I would have to think that Logan Weston's reputation would also precede him. Like, he's not just some jackass that was part of this entire platoon. Like, word probably has gotten back to the chain of command that, you know, this is the guy that did all of this absolutely insane shit and made a lot of this shit possible. That has to be a factor in. I have to believe that.
Hopkins is going to go back home to his family, and Logan Weston is kind of like, I don't really have any family to go home back to. My parents separated. I don't even know where they're living. My last home was my college, and I'm not really enrolled there, so I don't have anywhere to go. So James invites him to come with, and he goes and spends 30 days with the Hopkins family. After that, he gets orders to report to Fort Benning, Georgia to help with infantry school. While there, he writes a report on some recommendations on jungle warfare tactics and how to utilize them. This report gets read, immediately gets implemented, and he spends the rest of his military contract basically rewriting the book on jungle warfare and infantry tactics, as well as scouting tactics, and then teaching it to all the other instructors. After that, his active duty contract is up. He's free to go. He signs up for the inactive reserves and goes back to Bible school as a junior.
Back to school.
Okay, just so we're on the same page, he's like 30 now, and he's going back to college as a junior, which by today's standards, not that big of a deal. However, it's been 5 years since he was in college, and it's been the longest 5 years that any...
Did this guy influence the 77th training? No, the 77th was in operation at the same time. That's, yeah, it's, you have to remember, like the 77th ID was also in operation at the same time. So they were basically working in parallel.
Anybody has ever lived in their entire lives, and this isn't normal college. This is Bible school in Pennsylvania in like 1946, 1947. Okay, if you're not picking up what I'm putting down, he's showing up to class in a room full of what amounts to homeschooled Bible kids, and he's one of the most hardened combat veterans of all time. He doesn't really fit in. You know what I mean? What do you do with that little...
No. Okay, but counterpoint. Yeah, he is a hardened military veteran, and he's with a bunch of 18-year-old Bible, like homeschool Bible kids. He's also a wartime preacher. He also did function as a preacher, as a chaplain for hundreds of men during war. I mean, I could kind of see him, like, well, yeah, he doesn't relate to the other students, but where I'm going is he could sort of turn into like a mentor for them, kind of like he functioned as the chaplain when he was, you know, in the military. And I'm wondering if that's going to be sort of the twist. Like he doesn't fit in with them, but he's going to function as sort of like their older mentor guiding them through it.
Timothy and Susan that have been sheltered their entire lives. I don't think violence is ever the answer. Huh, motherfucker, unless you want to be speaking Japanese, it's got to be the answer sometimes. So yeah,
Trauma Tuna, thank you for the 5 gifteds. Thank you very much.
Doesn't make it very long going to class. He works out a deal with the college where they're going to allow him to complete his degree via correspondence, basically mailing the work back and forth, and he winds up taking a pastor's position at a church in a small coal mining town in Pennsylvania. So for about the next 3 years, he's finishing his degree via correspondence, and he's being the pastor to this small church. During this time period, the church finds out about his extensive combat experience, and they ask him to speak about it, and he just kind of goes up there, says the truth, everything that's going on, and there's this really pretty girl sitting in the front row, and midway through his speech, she leans over and whispers to somebody else, but he hears it. I hope we never invite this long-winded pastor here ever again.
I think she likes you.
So yeah, 3 months later, they wind up getting married. Then like a couple of weeks after they get married, he gets recalled into active duty. He goes into Fort Meade, is like, hey, here's the deal. I finished my pastorate degree. I want to become a pastor. Right now, I'm a lieutenant in the infantry. I want to switch over. I want to become a chaplain. To his surprise, he pretty much immediately gets denied, but he's stationed at Fort Meade now, and Fort Meade is like 20 miles away from Washington, D.C. So he literally just goes to the Pentagon and goes into the head chaplain of the entire U.S. Army's office and takes a meeting. He goes in and explains to the guy the situation, like, I got pulled out of Bible school so I could go fight in World War II. I was basically a chaplain for that entire 5 years, and I definitely was a chaplain when I was over in...
Kirby, leave it alone! Kirby! You're gonna make Hannah jealous! Stop it!
Burma, because I was the only guy there doing that job. Why can't I be a chaplain? He then gets told, according to Army regulations, you're 1 year too old to become a chaplain. No exceptions under any circumstances, which is fucking insane, but that's what happens. So obviously, he's pretty pissed up and heartbroken about this, but there's nothing he can do about it. He winds up getting promoted to a captain in the infantry, which also is crazy that he's only a captain. It's literally second lieutenant, first lieutenant, captain. I feel like he should be ranking higher than that right now, but whatever. Yeah. He ends up being an infantry captain at Fort Fort Meade for the next 2 years. During this time, him and his new wife have their first kid. It's a son. They name him Merrill after Merrill's Marauders. Fast forward 9 months, little Merrill is 9 months old. His wife is pregnant again, and Logan gets orders to prepare for overseas duty.
Hold up, are we just gonna skip over the fact that this man is just baby making like it's going out of style? You caught those dates, right? His son is 9 months old, and his wife is pregnant again. Like, no sooner did she give birth that he popped another baby into her belly. This man was about and determined to repopulate the country solo.
And he is given the option of going to Europe or going to Japan. And Logan Weston, the fighting preacher, says, I want to go to Japan and basically see what's up with him now. So Logan packs up his shit, says goodbye to his pregnant wife and his 9-month son Merrill, and then gets shipped over to Japan for occupation duty. Once he gets there, he's kind of shocked at the lack of animosity the Japanese people have towards the Americans. And because of that, he realizes he doesn't have any animosity towards these people either, and he kind of enjoys his time in Japan.
Why would I have hard feelings? I'm still picking pieces of your ass out of my boot.
Fast forward 6 months, June 1950, they get word that North Korea is attacking South Korea and they need to pack up because they're headed to South Korea to help them out. And they're told, don't bother bringing all your personal stuff. You're not being stationed over there. You're just going over there real quick. You shouldn't be gone more than a week.
We know what's gonna happen with this. Son of a bitch. Yeah.
All right, so Logan shows up in North Korea. He's like one of the first American military units there. If you don't know much about the Korean War, basically, if the North Koreans attacked, they shoved the South Koreans all the way down the peninsula to what's known as the Pusan Perimeter, and this is where Logan shows up. He gets there, it's all assholes and elbows. Everybody's scrambling, trying to get shit done, trying to keep the Pusan Perimeter intact. He shows up, they're like, oh, infantry? Captain, you have experience? Okay, cool. Take control of this company, Alpha Company of the 27th Regiment of the 25th Infantry Division. Take these guys that you don't even know yet out to the road, set up a roadblock, and if the enemy shows up, defend it. Logan heads out to their AO. They're already loading up on the trucks, getting ready to go. Has a quick meeting with his platoon and squad leaders like, hey, I'm your new boss, I guess. Let's go. They go out to this road, they scout the area, they find a good piece of terrain to set up a defensive fighting position, and they just wait. And it doesn't take very long because within a matter of hours, thousands of North Korean soldiers are coming down the road. They are outnumbered 130 to 1. Seeing this, Logan's shitting his pants. He gets on the radio like, I need artillery right now. They come back. Artillery's not even set up yet. That's not an option. While this is going on, they're actively inside of a firefight. Logan realizes he needs to strategically withdraw to a more tenable fighting position, and he's getting ready to do that. He's looking at maps. He's figuring out where he needs to move his men to give him a better chance at fighting this fight. And then 3 Russian-made T-34 tanks come barreling down the road, punch right through the block, right through the machine gun fire, and drive right past their position. Then, once they get far enough past, they stop, turn their turrets, and start firing on Logan Weston's position from the rear. Perfect, now we're surrounded, and we can't get away. There's only one option left for the main character, the fighting preacher. He's gonna say a little prayer about it, and then proceed to do some gangster shit. He hops on the radio, I need a rocket launcher team up here now. Eventually, 3 anti-tank infantry guys come tearing up on a Jeep with bazookas. Remember, the fighting preacher's never gonna ask a man to do something he wouldn't do himself, so he grabs those 3 guys and says, follow me. These tanks are about 300 yards away with nothing but rice paddies in between them. These rice paddies are like hip-deep mud, essentially. Logan takes his 3 bazooka guys, guides them towards the tanks. They traverse these rice paddies. They get within like 25 yards of these enemy tanks. While they're inside of this ditch right by these tanks, Logan instructs the rocket team, it's 3 guys, but they only got 1 launcher. Take out the lead tank, immobilize it, then immobilize the rear tank. That's going to trap the middle tank in the middle, and then we'll take it out. That's exactly what happens. They take out the tracks on the front tank, the tracks on the rear tank, immobilizing them, and then they take out the turret on the middle tank. Okay, problem now, the lead and rear tanks still have their turrets operational, and they start looking for wherever they just got hit from, so Logan instructs the men to start shooting out the periscopes on the tanks so they can't see them. While they're doing that, he reaches into his bag. He's got a couple of M1 anti-tank grenades that he starts firing at these tanks. And then suddenly, Logan regains consciousness. The 3-man launcher team is dead, and he wakes up with the torso of one of them on top of him. Besides the ringing in his ears and the guaranteed traumatic brain injury from the concussion wave, he's seemingly unscathed. Trying to think fast, thinking of where he can possibly hide to not get shot by this tank again, and the best solution he could come up with was on top of it. Once he gets up there, the enemies open the hatch. I have no idea why. I can only assume they thought he had like a satchel charge or something that was gonna blow up the tank, so they had to go up there to stop him. Regardless, they open the hatch. So he pulls out a frag grenade, throws it in the hatch, and then shuts the hatch.
That's a spicy meatball!
The other tank then opens their hatch and he shoots all of them one by one as they attempt to get out. At this point, Logan's super jacked up, but he's got to get back to his men, let them know the tanks are knocked out so they can get evacuated. So he starts heading back through these rice paddies. As he's traversing these rice paddies again, he comes across a sump hole, which is full, so he doesn't really see it. It kind of blends in with everything else, but it's like a 5-foot deep sump hole full of human fertilizer, and he falls into it neck deep, literally in human shit. Just when
Yeah, and from what I understand, I don't know if they still do it via sample, but yeah, this is something that the South Koreans still do. To my understanding, like the kimchi farmers, yeah, they still, at least I knew several years back, from what I, hearing from soldiers that have been stationed over there, like they use human shit for their fertilizer in the kimchi fields. At least they used to. Like when I talk to soldiers that have been stationed over there, like what, 10, 15 years ago, I think, that is a fake. What I don't know if the methodology of like the sump hole was still the same, but yeah, human shit is routinely used in South Korea. You don't think South Korea? I thought that South Korea, at least in like the rural areas, like the poor rural areas where they didn't have the more up-to-date farming methodologies and equipment and supplies, I believe that the poor rural communities of South Korea still use this method for fertilization for like their kimchi fields and whatnot.
He thought his day couldn't get any shittier, so he crawls.
That's exactly what I've heard, is that like soldiers that were stationed over in South Korea, when they would fly in for their duty stations, as soon as that, because it's, they're not going to like major airports with like walkways and whatnot. They're like right off they're walking down off the planes on the tarmac, and the second that door opens on the airplane, they're immediately get hit with like a very distinctive stench that just permeates the air of the country. It's, from what I heard, it's bad.
Deep, literally in human shit. Just when he thought his day couldn't get any shittier, so he crawls out of this hole, makes his way back to his men. They're
Hang on. Grok says South Korea stopped using human feces in the 60s and 70s. On an industrial scale, I will agree. For sure, it's still being used in like the farmland countries. In like a lot of the rural communities, I guarantee you it's still being used.
Thought his day couldn't get any shittier, so he crawls out of this hole, makes his way back to his men. They're looking at him and smelling him like, what the fuck? And he's like, the tanks are gone. Let's get the fuck out of here.
Speaks like Zeus.
Smells like poops.
He gets his men evacuated back to a further fighting position, linking up with the rest of the regiment, and there they're able to hold the line for the Pusan perimeter. Logan then finally gets sent to a hospital because he got blown up by a fucking tank. For this battle, his platoon is credited with killing over 200 enemy soldiers. Logan Weston receives a Silver Star for taking out the tanks, and the battalion headquarters had this to say, quote, "The real significance of the heroic actions by Captain Weston and his men under inspired leadership must be viewed as probably averting disaster. The actions of Captain Weston and his men truly turned a potentially tragic defeat into a significant victory, certainly contributing to stabilizing his sector." Then the newspapers back home find out about this, and of course they're gonna run with the story that a guy nicknamed the Fighting Preacher is taking out communist tanks, and they portray it like he did it with a bazooka, but that's not actually what happened. All right, so by like late July, Logan's patched up from the hospital. They send him out with his company on a foot patrol looking for the enemy. They walk around for days and days. They don't see shit. After that, it's time to, you know, go back for some R&R. So they're ordered to fall back to a place called Masan that's supposed to be a safe area, pick up a defensive position, which is basically just like, you're in a safe area, you know, be there to defend it, but nobody's coming. Chill out and relax. So that's what they're doing. They're basically camping, relaxing with the boys, hanging out. Despite the fact that everybody knows they're basically just on orders to rest, Logan's still trying to be the officer, you know, be the perfect role model for his men. So every once in a while, he's grabbing the binoculars, he's looking around the terrain, making sure he doesn't see any enemies or anything too fishy. And then on the night of August 3rd, 1950, off in the distance, miles away, he sees people approaching. As they get closer, he gets a head count. There's 76 of these guys. As they get even closer, he kind of starts to get images of their uniforms. He's like, those are North Koreans. So he hops on the radio back to headquarters to report it. Nobody picks up the radio because it's nighttime and this is a safe area and everybody's already dicking off or sleeping. So Logan sends one of his guys as a runner. I've got a 76-man column of North Koreans headed right towards me. The runner comes back and basically is like, the commander said, those aren't North Koreans. They're probably South Koreans. This is a safe area. To which Logan gets back in the binoculars, looks again. They're even closer now. They're definitely North Koreans. He sends the runner back a second time with the same message.
Oh
the runner
my
gets
God.
back a second time and tells Logan, the commander says they're not North Koreans. To which Logan is like, go back a third time, tell the commander whoever's approaching is carrying World War II era Japanese rifles and bayonets. I know what they look like because I fought these guys before. And you know who carries Japanese rifles and bayonets in the Korean War? The North Koreans. So the runner takes off a third time, probably out of breath at this point. Meanwhile, these 76 guys are just getting closer and closer and closer. By the time the runner gets back, these guys are like approaching the hill that Logan and his men are posted up on, and the runner delivers the same message over again. The commander says this is a safe area and that there's no way that those are North Koreans. They must be South Koreans, and you just don't know how to tell the difference.
He's Laotian. Ain't you, Mr. Khan?
Like, as soon as the runner tells this to Logan, the guys reach the base of the hill, they fan out, they start coming up the hill and opening fire on Logan and his men. Logan and his men start returning fire immediately. In between gunshots, Logan turns back to the runner, I'm paraphrasing here, but basically says, well, then go ask the commander why they're fucking attacking us then. The runner takes off for a fourth time, and then Logan promptly gets shot in the thigh. Logan goes into main character mode, somehow manages to stay on his feet, and is still returning fire against the enemy while a medic is applying a pressure bandage to his thigh, and then tells Logan, you're bleeding a lot, you need to go to an aid station, like now. As Logan receives this information, the North Koreans begin yelling Manzai, which means victory in Korean, and they charge up the hill. So Logan is actively bleeding out, he's participating in the firefight, and he's directing his men on how to conduct themselves inside this firefight. He realizes the situation is changing too fast, the boys need him, he's fucking staying. Logan gets his machine gunners repositioned, they repel this bayonet charge. During the firefight, he gets shot in the arm. By this point, he's losing so much blood, he's starting to get lightheaded. He realizes he does need to get to that aid station. He instructs one of his non-commissioned officers to hold these positions. He'll be right back. Logan then proceeds to take himself to the aid station, and it is like a NASCAR pit stop. He walks in the tent like, all right, pressure bandages and tourniquets, let's fucking go. He gets turned around and heads back up the hill. As he's headed there, he grabs a box of frag grenades that he can't carry because his arm's messed up, so he drags it with his good arm back up the hill. Once he gets back to his original foxhole, things are deteriorating. Hundreds of more enemy soldiers have shown up seemingly out of nowhere from his perspective, and now he basically has riflemen fighting men in close quarters combat, like with bayonets, trying to keep them off the machine gunners, while the machine gunners are mowing down the waves of guys that are trying to make their way up the hill. So Logan hops in on the action. Now he's defending the machine gunners too. He's throwing grenades down the hill. He's returning fire. When the charges actually make it close enough, he's bayoneting guys. At one point, he loses his trench knife inside some dude's rib cage. It's deteriorating fast. As all this is going on, Logan is still trying to pay attention to the overall big picture of this battlefield, and he sees that on the other end of this hill, up on the crest, an enemy machine gun team has made their way around the other side of the hill, gotten the high ground on them, and is setting up a machine gun to mow down him and his men. So Logan, by himself, grabs some grenades, makes his way there, and takes those guys out. As he takes their position, he sees that now there's an entire platoon of guys coming up the same route, launching a flanking maneuver that's also gonna wipe out him and his men. He doubles back to his guys, takes like 12 of them with him, and launches a counterattack against them to try to hold the position. During this counterattack, he gets shot in the chest, somehow manages to stay in the fight, and then wipes out this enemy platoon with his guys, re-gets his guys consolidated and set back up again, and by this point, they have completely wiped out the enemy attacking force. By this point, Logan is like, I need a doctor so bad. And as he's thinking that to himself, a bunch of enemy trucks come pulling up in the distance. Logan looks over at the radio man. They start calling in mortar fire on these trucks. As the mortars get dialed in, they start hitting the trucks, and Logan is like, okay, you guys have this situation under control. I gotta go. Logan gets to the aid station and his condition has deteriorated so much that he is beyond their level of care. They immediately transport him to an army surgical hospital outside of Busan, and he is beyond their level of care as well. They do what they can to stabilize him, and he gets shipped off to a hospital in Tokyo. Obviously, Logan survives because you can't kill this guy. While he's in the hospital, he finds out that his platoon is credited with killing 400 enemy soldiers and repelling an attack that almost certainly would have overrun regimental headquarters. And Logan individually was credited with killing 27 enemy soldiers, 6 of which with bayonet and 1 with a trench knife. For this, he was written up to receive the Medal of Honor. However, the regimental commander, you know, the same one that was told 3 times we're getting attacked, and he's like, no, we're not. That guy stepped in and was concerned that a Medal of Honor investigation into his actions would make him look like a dumbass, because he is, so he decided to intentionally have it downgraded to a Distinguished Service Cross to save his own career. So Logan was not awarded the Medal of Honor.
What the fuck? Are you fucking kidding me right now? Some fucking bureaucratic piece of shit is denying him his Medal of Honor because he royally fucked up. Logan Wesson pulled his ass out of the fire, and now he's gonna say, well, I don't want to get busted, so fuck you, your career and your accolades. Go fuck yourself with a bad dragon wrapped in Constantina wire and soaked in ghost pepper hot sauce, you cock-gobbling thunder cunt! Oh, this is what I'm talking about, why I fucking hate these bureaucrats. This is why I fucking hate bureaucrats in positions of authority. That bitch. Oh, fuck this guy very, very much. God damn it.
But he was awarded the next best thing, the Distinguished Service Cross. Don't you just love politics? From here, it's probably looking like Logan's going back home to America. He's got a long road to recovery ahead of him, and the policy at this point in time is if you are out of action for 60 days, you're sent back home to America, okay? Fast forward to day 59. Logan is still in the hospital, and he receives orders to report back to South Korea.
Fuck me, right?
So he shows back up to Busan in October of 1950 to his same unit, the Wolfhounds, the 27th Regiment of the 25th Infantry Division. He is not given command of his old platoon. Instead, he is promoted to major and made the Battalion Plans and Training Officer. Okay, a lot has changed in the Korean War since he's been gone for 2 months. Basically, when he left, they were pushed all the way down to the southern tip of the peninsula at the Busan perimeter. Since then, they've made the amphibious landing at Incheon behind enemy lines, and then UN forces and American forces have managed to push basically all the way back up to the 38th parallel. And this is right around the time where the goalposts get shifted from we're gonna fight to preserve South Korea to we're gonna try to take all of North Korea as well and just end the problem out of the gate. So basically, as soon as he gets back, it's basically like, hey, here, you're promoted, we're charging into North Korea. From here, they rapidly advance up the peninsula, and it's basically cleanup and guerrilla warfare. He actually writes in his memoirs how much nicer it is fighting in Korea than the Pacific. He's like, the weather's way better, they're not hiding in bushes, there's not much stuff for them to hide behind, they're just kind of like out in the open. When he was later interviewed about it, he said, and I quote, "The commies aren't nearly as good as the Japanese at guerrilla warfare fighting. They make their strikes, then they stand around and wait to get cut down." Within like a month, they've traveled all the way up to the peninsula, and him and the rest of his guys and the rest of the US forces in general are all at the Yalu River, basically the Chinese border. Okay, we all know what happens next. China gets involved, they attack with hundreds of thousands of men, catching us off guard, and then push the UN and American forces back down the peninsula. Logan's unit is ordered to basically go down to Seoul and then on to Suwon, and they basically fight a tactical retreat all the way down the peninsula. They fight, then they retreat a little bit, they fight some more, retreat a little bit, fight some more, retreat a little bit, all the way down to Seoul and Suwon. The Chinese forces chase them all the way down the peninsula to Suwon, and outside of Suwon on February 7th, one of the platoons gets pinned down by an enemy stronghold up on a hill. And the commander of this company is this crazy guy by the name of Louis Millet, a World War II veteran that had already led a bayonet charge previously because he heard a rumor that the communists were talking shit that Americans were were scared to fight with bayonets. So Louis Mallette orders the tanks off the road so they don't get hit with anti-tank fire, then grabs another platoon, joins it together with his platoon, and then proceeds to bayonet charge an enemy stronghold uphill into enemy machine gun fire and grenades. And Logan Weston, remember, he's like the big picture guy. He's in charge of basically all the platoons and their bigger movements on the battlefield, and he's watching this unfold, and it becomes apparent to him that this bayonet charge is going very well because they make it to the top of the hill and start killing the enemies in their trenches. So Logan takes command of the tanks that had pulled off the road and orders them around the crest of the hill because he realizes the enemy's going to be forced to retreat. Louis Mallette and his platoon kill over 100 guys, 30 of which with bayonet. The rest are forced to retreat down the hill and then run into tank fire directed by Logan. Okay, pause the story. Sidebar.
Yes.
All right, I've already done an entire video on Louis Mallette. Awesome story. This dude's a tremendous badass. He winds up earning the Medal of Honor for this action. But when I was doing the research for this video, when I read that he had oversaw Louis Mallette's bayonet charge, which is like extremely famous in military history, I threw the book down and I was like, there's no fucking way this guy has done this much shit. Nobody is this big of a main character. It's not possible. Okay, and it's not that I don't want to believe him, but extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence, and it's just he's done so much shit, it's starting to seem impossible. And that's by my standards, and my standards on what's impossible are well above the average person. So I dig into it, thinking there's no fucking way. But it's okay, we can double check this super easy. So I pull up all my notes from my Louis Mallette video years ago. Easiest thing I could look at, what unit was he in? Would they have been even in the same area at the same time? Sure enough, right there in my notes, Louis Mallette, leader of the Wolfhounds, 25th Infantry Division, 27th Regiment, Easy Company. What did I say earlier?
Fuck me, right?
So he shows back up to Musan in October of 1950 to his same unit, the Wolfhounds, the 27th Regiment of the 25th Infantry Division. Okay, I don't understand. I don't understand how one dude does this much shit. He was at Guadalcanal. Granted, he wasn't there for the main fighting, but still, he was at Guadalcanal. He was at New Georgia. He became one of Merrill's marauders. He arguably saved the entire Korean War by preserving the Pusan perimeter. He then is at the Yalu River when the Chinese attack, and then he just super casually oversees the last bayonet charge in American history. Oh, but don't worry, it gets even crazier because you want to know how his 1 week little excursion ends? Oh,
please.
He gets hit with enemy sniper fire in the chest, and the bullet gets stopped by the Bible in his breast pocket, and
fucking course it does. Course. That was the one thing thus far that has been missing from this fucking story. There we go.
2 days later, he gets orders to rotate back home. If it's not divine intervention, I don't know what it is. It's statistically not possible. The man is the main character. I don't know what else to say.
Oh, here we go.
So from here, Logan Weston goes back home to America, goes on leave for a little while. Then he gets orders to report to Fort Benning, doing some officer stuff. He's in charge of like an infantry regiment, whatever. And while he's there, he's like, you know, I'm in my 40s, but I'm sick of walking everywhere all the time. I want to become a paratrooper. So he goes, gets his jump wings, becomes airborne in his 40s. Okay, I need you to appreciate how truly insane this is. This man is 40 years old, and when you jump out of a plane for the Army on a static line jump, you're hitting the ground at like 18 miles an hour, okay? Airborne troops end up literally getting 1 to 2 inches shorter from the compression of their spine and hips over doing jumps. And he's doing this shit at 40. I'm 32, and when I watch my 3-year-old jump off the couch in my living room, I'm like, that seems like risky behavior. And he's out here jumping out of fucking planes. He finishes up his rotation at Fort Benning, then he gets sent to the Pentagon doing like high-level officer shit, you know, admin stuff, policy, training tactics, yada, yada, yada. Hates it the entire time. While he's there, he hits 20 years in service, and they're like, hey, you can either retire or take a new assignment. He's like, I'll take a new assignment. So he goes and becomes a battle group commander overseeing 3,000 men at the 82nd Airborne Division. He's there for 4 months, and they're like, hey, did you want to become a Green Beret at the age of 46? And he's like, sure, why not? Which he manages to accomplish because obviously at this point, so he becomes a Green Beret. Then he gets put in charge of teaching all the other Green Berets anti-guerrilla counterinsurgency tactics. Then the Vietnam War pops off. He gets sent overseas for a year or two, and I quote, train Laotian fighters.
somewhat was playing around with McVie oh.
Right. You know, because Laos and Cambodia definitely aren't the two neutral nations bordering Vietnam that McVie was waging a shadow war in under the guise of training local militants. He finishes up his 9 months of being a training director, and then he has the option of like, okay, you can go back home now, or you can extend for 36 months and bring your family over here. He chooses to extend for 36 more months and bring his family over. Now, put yourself in his shoes. What do you do when you're bringing your family away from America over to Southeast Asia during the Vietnam War so you can train the locals? You got to make it up to him somehow, right? I mean, what do you do? What do you do with the kid? You buy him a dog, you buy him a pony. Well, you're in Asia now, so you buy your kids a pet monkey and you name it Spunky. Spunky the monkey.
This guy. Oh my fucking god! Spunky the monkey! Because of course! Of course!
Because that's the one thing this story was missing, apparently. Okay, I don't even know what's happening anymore. This story started in 1914 in a cabin in the woods in Pennsylvania, and now we're in Southeast Asia buying monkeys. Sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Anyways, the family's living there for a while Dad's doing whatever Dad's doing.
Can't take no pictures lying down there, Sonny.
Eventually, one of his kids winds up getting really sick. They can't get him the level of care that they need, so they fly him back home to Texas to Fort Sam Houston, one of the biggest medical systems in the U.S. military. He comes with, that's where he gets stationed, gets new orders, starts working there, while his kid gets treatment. Luckily, his daughter Sherry winds up recovering. He continues to work at Fort Sam Houston for the rest of his career when he retired in 1968 after 28 years.
Holy fuck! Look at all of those bells. Fuck me. That is insane. Holy shit. How many soldiers, how many military servicemen have that many fucking medals? Yeah, like the Russian and North Korean generals wishes they had a tenth of this man's bling right now. If this man showed up to a meeting with Russian and North Korean generals in his Class A's with all of his medals, he would be medal mugging the fuck out of every single one of them combined. Fuck me.
In service. After that, he goes on to become the coordinator of campus religious life at Texas A&M for 13 years before retiring from that job and retiring as a whole, and would eventually live happily ever after, passing away at the age of 89. And that is the story of Logan Weston, aka the Fighting Preacher. Thank you for watching. Best way to support the channel is go buy some merch, maybe drink some Echelon. Links for that's over at thefatelectrician.com. Quack bang out. This might be the craziest story I've ever done. It just keeps going and going and going. Like, the dude did so much stuff.
Yeah. Like, holy crap, that's insane. Absolutely fucking insane. Holy shitballs. That's just amazing. Like, there is no better words to describe that other than that was just absolutely fucking amazing.